All right, so on this hot Saigon morning, it's getting kind of humid. We are here with the Best Ever Food Review Show host, Sonny, entrepreneur and pitmaster, Mark, and myself, Josh, and this is Sexy Meat Talks. So last week, we had the pleasure of hanging out with Sonny, watching Sonny and Mark go through the process of cooking a full ostrich and them filming their show, and we got to see behind the scenes. So today we're going to ask some questions about how the episode came together, a little bit about Sonny's process, whatever he's willing to share or wants to talk about.
Absolutely.
And some other food questions too, just to get a little insight that people may not, to complement what you do on your show. So first of all, we just all met up and we just sat down. We've got some drinks in front of us, but this is fairly typical Saigon weather, which is I'm realizing I made a mistake by wearing a long sleeve shirt and pants rather than shorts and a t-shirt. So this is gonna be
I can turn
nice
on that
and sweaty.
fan. Although it'd be
it's
noisy,
fine.
huh?
It would mess with the mics, to be honest.
Okay.
But so let's jump right into it. Last week, you guys accomplished quite a task.
I just filmed it and ate it. I think it's almost all Mark and Jamie. Jamie, who cooked the deviled eggs, like the ostrich egg, deviled egg, and then Mark did the wings. He did the whole ostrich. We just got it on camera.
That was a beautiful presentation, the deviled egg.
Yeah, that was cool.
What were some of the garnishes Jamie put on that? I could see from afar, but I couldn't see
the
up
ingredients? Oh,
I noticed some bacon.
mayonnaise, paprika, a little bit of chili powder.
Big hunks of bacon.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, the
bacon.
garnish on top, on the very top. He put bacon, pieces of bacon shoved into the yolky part.
Much larger than you could get away with in a chicken egg.
And how did you guys come up with this idea? What was the egg in this story? How did it hatch, and how did it turn into a giant ostrich getting cooked?
Well, the initial talk started. We had done something a while ago with Vietnamese ladies trying American barbecue for the first time, and the video did pretty well. And we wanted to just do something next level that hadn't really been done before. And so I was talking with Tim at that time. Or were we in a group chat at that time?
We were, but it was you and Tim.
I think it was
just
me and Tim at
along
first.
for the ride. And
Yeah.
I'm like, what are they going to make me do?
So me and Tim were talking about it, and the biggest thing is, because there's so many weird things you could do with food. Like you could have a train of pigs, like human centipede style, but whatever we did, we wanted it to have some kind of culinary merit to it and not just be visually shocking. And so that's why it took a while to come up with a good idea. I would have to look back in my chat to know exactly, but I think he mentioned ostrich or I mentioned ostrich, and when I looked it up on YouTube, just ostrich or ostrich meat, like the third video showed a farm in Vietnam, and I realized it's super accessible here, which I did not expect, but then in the end, it doesn't really surprise me either. So, I mean, you can find a lot of really obscure, bizarre, unexpected meats here. Like you can eat porcupine, in the countryside you can eat rat meat. And so there was an ostrich farm, and I think it was just kind of set from there. It was just a matter of how are we going to do it. Initially I wanted to go to the ostrich farm and do kind of two parts, and then I just realized it would be too sad to see the live animal and then the dead animal.
So I've seen the porcupine for sale up in Dalat.
Yeah.
Different restaurants up there. Have you ever tried that? Just curious.
Yeah, we were just in Bali a few weeks ago, and it's interesting. Bali is like this. It seems like a kind of a tourist trap. Like tons of Australians, tons of yoga studios, and vegan food shops. So it seems like kind of a healthy hipster getaway, Bali. And so when we looked into food there, I'm like, this is going to be boring. It's just going to be restaurants, and maybe we'll get some rotisserie pig. But they had some really interesting, unusual stuff there. And a couple things were raw pork blood lawar, some kind of a dish they make, and then dragonflies, catching and eating dragonflies. And finally, in the east of Bali, we had a porcupine, and it was nuts. I mean, they had caught it a few days before. They have like a whole sacred ritual around it, and we cooked and ate the porcupine.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it didn't. It tasted okay.
So it was you said sacred. So that was it part of a specific religion in Bali? I don't know what the religious.
So it's interesting because Indonesia is has the largest Muslim population of anywhere around the world, but Bali, which is part of Indonesia, is all Hindu. I mean, mostly Hindu, over 85%. And so their kind of Hindu is transformed from that which is in India, which reached them, hundreds of years ago. And so they like still eat beef, and it's kind of their adaptation, like how Hinduism is developed alongside their own culture. But part of that for some of the people is these sacred ceremonies with these 4 sacred animals, like porcupines, pangolins, which...
Pangolins.
Do you know a pangolin?
Sure, yeah.
Great.
Cousin of the
Deer.
penguin?
It's like an armored penguin, but on land with a tail.
Yeah. And
So not really.
and a rhino is one of their sacred animals. And they do these ceremonies where they go, but with the rhino, I go, are rhinos even in Bali? Like, what are you talking about? And they're like,
They
no.
probably were, right?
They
At
were.
some
They
point.
used to be in like North Sumatra, something like that. And so I was prying a little bit, trying to be like, he goes, well, I'm like, you're not getting rhino here. So what do you do if you need rhino for a ceremony? And they go, oh, even a little bit of blood is okay. As if that would be the end of the conversation. And I'm like, where do you get rhino blood?
Rhino blood. Yeah.
Like, what kind of like weird black market have I
In the rhino district.
have I stumbled upon here? Because, well, I mean, obviously the rhino population is one of the most endangered in the world. Poaching is a huge problem, and
Yeah.
I go, are you worried about running out of rhinos? Because people need to kill rhinos to get rhino blood. And he goes, oh, maybe they just take the blood. I go, I highly doubt that there's someone with a surgical needle just like sucking out drawing out some blood from a rhino.
I imagine
to
a
sell
rhino's
it.
probably not going to be too happy about that.
Right.
So you're going to have to train for that.
There's no way that's happening. So I didn't dig any deeper, but somewhere in a village in East Bali, in somebody's freezer, they have probably a little small glass container of rhino blood.
Maybe they water it down.
They said they just need a few drops for the ceremony.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, we had porcupine. It was interesting.
Cool. Okay. Well, back to the ostrich. When we were discussing the farms up north, when you were discussing the farms up north, did the eggs come from there as well? Because you also had 4 or 5 ostrich eggs.
I don't know, Mark, where'd the eggs come from? I think Dalat.
It's funny that this conversation started earlier in the year when you and Tim were first talking about it, and then I think all the way back in February was when this initiated. I traveled back to the U.S. and I was following the thread, like, oh my God, they found an ostrich. I'm cooking an ostrich. So I'm online looking, like, what am I doing? Like, oh, they want an egg now. And I was just kind of following your guys, like, I'm the one who has to cook it, but they were just rolling it. And, like, they found it all, and then they, like, we could have it delivered. Mark, we're going to have you an ostrich in the steak. Can you cook it? And,
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can do it. So in the end, where it came from, there's ostrich farms all over Vietnam, we found out, but we had a connection somehow to a farm up in Hanoi. They also sent us the initial eggs, but when it came time for filming, we couldn't get eggs, and then we found an ostrich farm in Dalat that had eggs, so those were sent down the day of shooting. Jamie had he had no net under him, he had no tests. He was like, I'm going to do this in front of you guys. And actually, I think, made for a better shoot because we didn't know if it was going to work. We didn't. Jamie's cracking the egg and like, and one of them broke, but it was all last minute and it just came together. The egg came from Dalat, the bird came from Hanoi. We planned these dates after your big trip to Iran.
Right.
And it just all kind of came together at the last possible minute.
Yeah, it's usually like that for me, so I'm used to that. But yeah, Mark and the whole team there pulled it all together. It was awesome.
So as you were going into the first day of filming, which I believe was a Wednesday, how were you feeling going in?
Well, I thought, Mark had already done a practice bird, So I was fine. Yeah, I wasn't worried about anything. I'm just there to capture it at that point. So for me, we were good. We just had to deal with the inclement weather of Saigon. But yeah, no issue on my side as far as that.
Do you find yourself getting senses of excitement when you're doing many of your episodes, or are you at a point where you've done so many that it's a bit of work mixed with play?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't ever want to feel like I'm acting. And in fact, Mark heard me say probably 100 times, like, yeah, save it for the camera, save it for the camera. If you look at someone like probably the most famous person in the travel food niche, which would be Anthony Bourdain, he was always seen as kind of cold, a bit cold and withdrawn. But what he would do is his camera guys would go in a day before, they'd set up the scene, they knew where to put the cameras, they knew where the meal was, and then right before shooting, Bourdain would come in, sit down, cameras are going, and then he interviews the people, he eats the food, he reacts to it. And so everything in that moment is like fresh and happening for the first time and organic. Otherwise, when you meet people, they want to dump everything right away on you. Like, I mean, it's natural. You meet someone, they want to say hi and tell you about their life, their story, and then you roll camera, and like all that magic is gone. So it's different for me because I'm the kind of producer, director, and host, and so I try to keep that magic as much as I can. And sometimes I just have to tell people, like, I can't talk to you now, or I want you to tell me about these things, but wait till we're rolling the camera, so I can react organically. Because I mean, I've done it before where I like have someone repeat something and kind of fake react to it, but I don't like it because it feels like acting. Who wants that? It doesn't feel authentic. So where I'm always kind of chasing that authentic excitement. And I mean, I own the show, the team, we can do whatever the hell we want. Obviously I take input from everybody, but we can do whatever we want and go wherever we want. So we chase whatever is most exciting to us. Definitely the Ostrich was very exciting, very cool. Like it's something we hadn't seen done before, and my show, usually it's much more about culture and breaking new ground in that way. Like when we went to Papua recently and filmed with some tribes that no one had filmed with before. But it can also be about roasting a whole fucking ostrich too.
Yeah, I witnessed that firsthand a couple times. I'm like, let's start to tell Sonny something about the don't tell me, do it on film.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, and then I started to get it. I'm like, oh, and then you would have a genuine response because you hadn't heard that before. It was you were learning something about the process or whatever it was we were working on at the time. But I experienced that firsthand about 50 or 60 times.
Yeah. And even then it's tough because probably half the time you'll forget to tell me the thing that you had in your mind, and that's just part of shooting the way we shoot. But we try to keep it as real as we can.
But that's where the experience comes in, and this is some of the behind-the-scenes stuff we did want to capture. That's a trade secret, I guess, you learn over time, just through experience, where you have to build up that habit where you are telling yourself, like, we got to save this for video and to be actually be recorded.
Yeah.
Mark and I are early on in our podcasting days, but we've been going through a very similar thing where we've learned how to talk over each other less, try to save different segments, and try not to ask too many questions at one time. I'm really bad at that. I usually ask questions in threes. Not to be funny, it's just how I do things sometimes.
Oh, like in a row? You'll ask 3 questions in a row?
It's something I've noticed because I'm the one who edits everything, and so it's a true test for me because I'm one of those people who did not like the sound of my voice, but now I'm used to it.
Yeah.
But also I have noticed I say the word fantastic a lot in interviews, and so I've consciously been reducing that. I tend
Fantastic job.
Yeah, you're doing a fantastic job so far.
Thank you guys. It is fantastic. And I've noticed that I can count on fingers, like, oh, here it comes. I'm about to ask Chef Jamie 1, 2, 3 questions, and his response was literally, I was not prepared for this. This is too much.
Yeah, because it's all at one time, right?
And it's me honestly being enthusiastic, but not doing maintenance to my question asking. You ask one question at a time, you give one answer. If you're filling someone with a few questions, that's not very fair, and it's not very professional on my side. And it's also, you can't answer 3 questions at one time.
Yeah, usually you'll just get one of those questions answered then.
So it's something you have to learn.
Yeah, totally.
Are there other filming, I wouldn't say trick, but other habits you have to go through when you're out at a site or at a location and you're doing a project?
Well, similar to what I said before, since I'm directing and hosting, it's tough because I still want the element of surprise, and sometimes there's surprising weird stuff we're dealing with. So I had to know enough to tell my team how to film it, but try not to know everything. I don't want to go through every step in detail. So, like one time in Japan, we ate. They're like, "Oh, it's this dancing fish," and it wasn't making sense. Oh, I can't. No, it's called ikezukuri. I forgot what it means in English. Some kind of live sashimi, basically. I couldn't figure it out what they were trying to say, but I knew how to go film it. And then when we went in the kitchen, I see the chef quickly fillet the fish, make his little sashimis, put it on a platter. The fish head and like backbone and everything also went on the platter, and the fish was still gasping for I said for air in the video, and people were like, they don't gasp for air, so I guess it was gasping for water. So as you're looking down at your
Technically, you're right, though.
Yeah.
And you're splitting hairs. He's gasping for oxygen that's in the water, which is air. All right, we'll let it slide.
There you go. But it was this awesome real reaction because I was like, holy shit, what is happening? Like, is this, I didn't know this was something people did there. And so the fish is still like moving, and they're like, go ahead, eat some. While the fish is like, you can look the fish in the eye while eating the sashimi. So in that moment, like, fortunately, I didn't know everything. And so it's always a battle of trying to know a bit and not have to act. I don't want to act. So that's something I have to be mindful of. Otherwise, I've found communicating from country to country, it's the same issue over and over. Like, it's like constant misunderstandings and me never really knowing what's going on. And so I try my best not to plan too rigidly, because things always change, and there's always like, oh no, we're not doing this food, we're doing this food. So the more flexible I can be, the better. Yeah, even yesterday we're filming a lobster. It was supposed to be just 3 dishes. I thought they were gonna start taking the body apart in front of us, and then they cut the stomach open and start to bleed it into a bowl full of shrimp pieces and herbs, and then create kind of a lobster blood jello. Have you ever heard of this?
No, not.
The lobster blood will actually harden. It's clear. It's maybe like a little cloudy looking. It'll harden or kind of gelatinize like a jello, and you can eat it like that. But if I had some like super rigid plan, then we wouldn't have been able to fit that in. But I was like, I'm just like showing up at the restaurant. We're like, all right, we could do an intro here, and then we pull out the lobster there. Let's go in the kitchen. Let's see what happens there. So it's good to be flexible.
Going through so many of your videos, they're very well produced, very well edited.
Thank you.
Have you? You're very welcome. I think you and your team deserve a lot of credit for that. Has anything backfired? Have you been out on a project or at a location that it just did not work out?
I think we've almost always have been able to make the most out of everything we've done. I mean, we had, and a couple times we've had to shoot the failures, and I think that's fun for the audience too. And that's me as kind of a perfectionist-minded person. It's hard for me to accept those moments, but I've realized I just need to incorporate the reality of what's happening. I can give you a couple examples. In Kenya, we went to a beach where they're supposed to have seafood, and they're supposed to have a grill. They're supposed to have all this stuff. There's nothing there anymore. They weren't making money from the fish. Everyone's selling cassava chips. Like, who cares for a food show? But there's all these guys who hustle on the beach, and they're like, hey man, what do you need? And we say we are interested in grilling, interested in getting fish. They say they'll do it, and we make a deal with this guy. 2 hours later, he comes back with a grill. It's about to turn dark. A grill with like hardly any charcoal in it. He's brought back lobsters, which are all frozen. So about 10 small lobsters, but they're frozen solid. And then a kingfish that's like this big, huge fish that would take forever to cook. And he starts cooking it. And in that moment, we see a guy walking by just selling eggs. He's selling hard-boiled eggs. He breaks it open. He puts a little seasoning on there. And so that's what we ended up focusing on and trying out and just being very transparent. I'm like, and not without like kind of shitting on the culture or the people, just being like, yeah, so we came here. This guy's a hustler. I got hustled. He's still working on the barbecue. And I'm going to review a goddamn egg. So let's talk about this egg. And so I think people joining in that kind of misery is fun. Something that didn't come out yet. And obviously I don't want that to be the scenario ever, but if it is, the best way to handle it is to just like let go. And recently in Iran, we were gonna do this whole like cooking. It's funny, we ate ostrich in Iran, in the desert, and we're in the middle of the desert. They've made a fire, and it is so windy. It's so hot and so windy. It's near the end of the day, so we're trying to capture the cool part of the day, and literally sand is blowing over the food. And the skewers are maybe 8 centimeters, 10 centimeters, like 6 inches off the ground. And I'm like, is that really, that's where you're gonna cook it? They're like, yeah, this is how we do it. And it's like, yeah, but what about the sand? And they go, well, usually we go in a valley, like a different type of place. I'm like, well, why did we do that today? What are we doing differently, something differently for? And that's another thing that can happen is like, I was like, oh, this place is pretty. So that, well, we'll just do what you want. Instead of being like, well, it is, but we shouldn't do it because we're going to get sand in the food. They go, that's what you want, we'll do it. Like just trying to be gracious. And then it ended in calamity because all of the ostrich skewers were coated in sand. And that was another moment where I wanted to go home, and I was like, I had a lot of different emotions, but I was kind of pissed off and disappointed. And at some point, as we're eating it, I just like let go. I laughed about it. I was very transparent. I was like, I think it's pretty good. I maybe wouldn't put in so much sand. Everything has sand. It's a bit gritty. And it ended up being kind of hilarious. And I think people will, in the end, that hasn't come out yet. I think in the end, people will look at that and be able to laugh with us. I hope. Or at us. That's fine too. As long as it's entertaining. At the end of the day, we're just trying to make content that's entertaining for everybody.
It's refreshing to hear. So you're just trying to find the positive. So even in, like you were saying, a failure, what some people might look at as a failure, you're still finding something from it. You're still getting something out of it. To fail, I think, would be for the project to end and it never gets published.
Right.
Or even then, I wouldn't necessarily even view that as a failure, because if you and your team are learning something from it and able to grow from that, it's still something. But
I don't think, and like I said, so I think we've been able to make use of all those kind of messed up situations and have gotten through. Oh, there is one. Oh yeah, there is one. In Hai Yang, in the north of Vietnam, there was a guy who was supposed to be our fixer there. And that's the hard thing about finding fixers is this mother effer in Hai Yang was supposed to help us find horse meat, find all this different food. And we're gonna make buckwheat pancakes in Hai Yang in the north of Vietnam. And he brought us, like, it's some of the most beautiful country you'll see anywhere in the world. Like crazy valleys, mountains, what do you call like the different ethnic minorities of Vietnam? There's like 54 different ethnic minorities in Vietnam, and so many there with beautiful clothes, walking on the street, baskets on their back, and he brought us to a hostel to make buckwheat pancakes. The location was right next to a hostel. I'm hearing U.S. country music in the background in the location where we're supposed to film. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why are we here? And he's like, this is where we'll make the buckwheat pancake. And everything was wrong. And the hard part about finding a fixer is you need someone who is passionate and not just doing it for the money. If someone's 100% doing it for the money with no pride in what they're doing, then, and with no worry about their reputation, just trying to make a quick buck, they will put the least amount of effort into making the content for you. So that's what this guy was doing. Like he had been to that hostel before to pick up people as a tour guide, and he goes, oh, next door to that hostel there's a guy who's got like a buckwheat miller.
So
I'll just go there.
He didn't do any work. He
didn't do anything.
I already know this.
And later on the ride back, so we did abandon that. On the ride back, I go, why? What's going on, man? I feel like you're BSing me. I feel like you didn't put any work into this. And he goes, no. I go, all these places are beautiful. We could go to any home in these mountains and make these famous buckwheat pancakes. And he goes, well, the buckwheat pancake here is more delicious. And I was like, bro, no one thinks a buckwheat pancake is delicious. It's just not. It's a buckwheat pancake. Who cares? The cool thing to see would be like some traditional mill and a beautiful backdrop in a traditional home, and not like, wow, this is the highest quality buckwheat pancake of northern Vietnam. So that guy totally BS'd us. He ripped us off, and we did abandon that. That was super early on. That was when our team was at 3 people. That's around 2 years ago. I think we've become more savvy in that time in figuring out who we deal with and vetting people a little bit more. But, you still run into crappy situations, and we just try to make the most of it.
Is there an agency you can use to find fixers or people in other countries to help you out? I'm sure it's not every country, but
what we do varies country to country. In Vietnam, obviously, we have a Vietnamese producer. When we went to the U.S., we have also an American producer who helped us there. When we shoot in India, we have someone who's dependable that we always use there. And then some countries, like we're about to go to Japan, and we'll partner with a tour company, and they'll get on the same page with us. They have contacts to all the food places, and sometimes a fixer, like we went to Iran, this guy knew how to get us into Iran, but he didn't know anything about food. So we attack it from all different angles, and there's no one way to do it. So sometimes tour companies, sometimes a fixer, sometimes people just fans of the show. When we went to Bali, just some people who liked the show were able to help us, and we did it that way. Yeah.
Cool. Good to know.
Yeah, it's all over the
just
place.
Just due diligence and keeping in contact with the ones who will help you out and do a good job.
Oh yeah, totally.
Cool. Do you ever find yourself being contacted by other organizations and asking for recommendations? Is there like a networking that different food outlets will use, or food shows will?
Surprisingly, no. You would think there might be some of that. I think if anything, people are just looking at our videos. If they're doing research, maybe they just look at where we've been or what we've done, and maybe they imitate that.
Okay.
Yeah, at most that. Otherwise, there's a few other guys that do what we do, and we're all friendly with each other and give each other advice when we need it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So there's a nice, good community there.
Yeah.
So I've been letting Josh lead because I was involved in the Ostrich episode, but now that we've kind of jumped into, like you're saying, other people that do what you do, who are some of the people that inspired you to do this in the first place, or what made you want to do the best ever food review show?
It's a few different layers. Like first, when I lived in Minnesota, and I was 22, 23, I watched Bizarre Foods and No Reservations with Bourdain. And so that was a big eye-opener for me, coming from a place that wasn't diverse at all in central Minnesota, and seeing like insane food. I liked Bizarre Foods even more at that time. And just seeing the insane stuff people were eating in different countries and how different it was fascinating to me. And eventually, when I was 24, I moved to Korea. And I think there's a lot of reasons why, but definitely those guys had an influence on that. But then I didn't watch either of their shows, honestly, for like 8 years or something like that. Like, it was interesting for me until I moved, and then I was in this new, interesting, strange environment. I wasn't thirsty for like, I need even more. What's Bourdain up to now? So I was kind of living that life. And then years and years later, after I kind of developed my video career in Korea, There's a couple YouTubers that influenced me a lot. One was a guy named Jack, I forgot his last name. It was a YouTube channel called Jack's Gap. This young kid made good travel videos. And then another channel is H3H3, who did just kind of comedy videos. But they were so poorly made, yet so funny, that I was like, yeah, you know what? I should just start. Because I'm such a perfectionist that I just didn't want to ever get going. And so the combination of those two, this guy who was making cool travel videos and this other guy was making great comedy videos with no production value, just his wife like pointing a handy cam at his face. So I started really small, and like I never thought it would build into what it is now. And even in the very beginning, I had two different ideas. One was Best Ever Food Review Show. The other one was called The Year of Fear, where I was going to go like conquer all my fears and go around the world and do scary shit. But one good piece of advice for people wanting to make content is, this comes from Gary Vaynerchuk's book, is like, can you easily write down 50 episode ideas, right? Even the podcast you're doing now. Obviously you can, so it's a good outlet. But if you're like, I'm going to do a series on unique kind of gambling around the world, I don't know, it might be kind of finite. Maybe that lasts 2 or 3 years, and then it's like, well, we kind of went to all the main countries and everything's getting repetitive now. And so that's the same thing with Year of Fear. Well, I only have like 20 things I could think of, and then soon I'd be making up stuff to be afraid of. Like now I'm afraid of being in a box with tarantulas, I guess.
I fear cotton balls.
Yeah, right.
What were some of the fears?
And like bungee jumping, and I was gonna try to do a bodybuilding competition. I lost a lot of weight, but I did not end up doing that competition. But maybe one day. I can't remember some of the other ones, like being buried.
He was this close, and then he got afraid and chickened out.
Yeah, I mean, I was ripped, I was super tan, but it was the stage fright that stopped me, and not the fat. And so I put.
So Fear canceled the Fear show.
Well, actually, lack of effectiveness, because I had started publishing the food show, and then I put out a trailer for the Year of Fear, and it just got an okay reception. And I just realized that food was the way to go. It was what more people were interested in, and it was easier for me. But even in the very beginning, my first 8 episodes were just about Western food in Korea. And I realized quickly that if I was going to, I just needed to increase my demographics. Like, trying to appeal just to Westerners in Korea wasn't a good idea if I was ever going to get any traction or any kind of audience. So after 8 episodes, I expanded to doing more like bizarre foods. I just ripped off bizarre foods. I looked at an old video and I just admitted it on camera. I'm like, I always liked that show, Bizarre Foods. I'm gonna do what he did. I'm just gonna go to the Philippines. I've been there before. I saw some weird stuff. I'm gonna go document that. And then at some point, I made another pivot where it wasn't just weird stuff, but now it's just like unique. What is like the most unique food around the world? And that's kind of a broad enough definition where we can cook a whole ostrich or a porcupine, or sometimes it might just be like biryani or cooking bread in the desert in India. And yeah, it's just bread, but they're cooking it on the ashes of cow dung or something like that. So, or more traditional foods, anything that would be unique to a kind of Western or American point of view. And that's kind of, as I make the show, it's like, what would be interesting to the friends I grew up with? And that's kind of the audience I try to keep in mind.
What were some things that heightened your sense of adventure when it was Minnesota?
Yeah.
When I was young, I did a lot of camping with my mom and my dad and my brother. And we always did pop tent and cooking on a grill, or sometimes just a pit, or making digging a I guess a trench. I'm not even sure what this is called, but digging a trench, so the wind would go into the trench to rile the coals. I think I learned that one at Boy Scouts. Were you a part of clubs, or was your family very outdoorsy, or
no,
when you were young?
No, I think getting to this point took a lot of momentum and a lot of time. I think I couldn't be doing the show I'm doing now if I hadn't already lived in Asia for 8 years and been outside of my own country and gone through the steps of harshly judging a country by the standards with which I grew up, to becoming sympathetic and understanding of other cultures in their own context. I think that took me years to kind of adapt in that way. I had other show ideas when I was in Korea, wanting to cover like edgy topics, dog meat, prostitution, and I was not at all at a intelligence level, at a, what's a good word for it, like emotional intelligence level to be handling those topics. I just knew I wanted to do something like crazy, but I didn't know what, and this is years and years ago. So I started to develop ideas, but it didn't go anywhere, and I'm glad I didn't pursue it too much because I just wasn't mature enough. So over time, oddly enough, all the weird skills I've picked up throughout my lifetime have led me to where I am now. Like teaching in Korea, that helped me become a better director. Taking time to be a director, videographer, knowing every step of the filmmaking process. Living outside of my country in Korea, traveling around, trying different foods, like being part of a culture very different from my own. All of those things have led me to having this very unique skill set that allows me to do what I do today. Yeah.
Very cool. I was talking with actually the Singaporean photographer who works with us, Mervin, the other day, and he was telling me about a food superstition that some Vietnamese have, and it's with the Trum Vit Loon, which is the developing duck egg.
Like balut?
Yes, it's like the Vietnamese name of balut. And in Vietnam, many Vietnamese, I guess, believe, this is new to me, I didn't even know this was a superstition, but many Vietnamese believe that if you have bad luck, you eat one egg to reverse your luck. If you have good luck, you eat 2 eggs to continue your luck. And so if you eat 4 eggs, your luck's continued. 6 eggs. Or you eat an odd number to change your luck. Do you have any food superstitions?
Oh, me personally?
Yeah.
No. I'm so anti. I know it's not an interesting answer. I'm very anti.
I kind of anticipated this one.
I'm very anti superstitious.
What's a funny food superstition you've seen people have?
And I'm very like practical, pragmatic, and just kind of straightforward with everything. But in Korea, they say that. This is gonna sound too mean. Koreans are some of the smartest people around the world. If you look at test scores, for example, they also believe that if you fall asleep with the door closed and the fan on, that you will die.
I've heard people say that.
It's called fan death. And when I've asked people about it, they're like, it like chops up the air. It's like, okay, yeah. But they grow up with that. And when I travel with my Vietnamese team, if they're in a room, my camera guy, if he's in a room and there's a mirror across from his bed, he will take the mirror down or he will cover it because he believes it will suck out his energy. And I know those aren't food related, but
no, that's fine.
It's funny. I think you can.
I can share one with you. I don't think I shared it during the filming of the Ostrich episode, but I found this out during the filming of it. My wife told me. I'm like, I couldn't believe how there's ostrich farms in Coochie and Dalat. When we were looking for the egg, we're finding farms all over the place, and we finally found eggs.
Right.
And she said, "Oh, the eggs are very popular." I'm like, why is that? She's like, "Well, if you're pregnant and having a baby, if you eat the ostrich egg, you're going to have a smart baby." And she said, "Matter of fact." I'm like, that's not true. She said, "No, it's true."
Well, another one is people around the world thinking proteins do different things to you when it's just, if you broke it down, it's like this is just protein and fat from an animal. So again, in Korea, they think if you eat dog in the summer, and I shouldn't say they, because just the number of people eating dog has been drastically reduced. It's more like an old man thing to do now, and the younger generation's not doing it nearly as much. But some people do eat dog, and they say that it reduces your body temperature and it cools you down. And it's like, I don't think so. It's just meat.
See how that could be
Any of
possible.
these superstitions from any culture, though, they usually have something to them. I mean, if you say eating an egg is going to make a smart baby, well, I mean, you go back to 50 years ago when there was a lot of malnutrition. Eating eggs is nutritious, and there's probably a reason why, okay, well, let's put this together, and it just becomes a fact.
Yeah.
Eating this egg makes a smart baby.
Exactly. Like,
So
It may aid in the
I mean,
process.
you
but
laugh at
really
it,
it's the
culture to
protein from
culture,
anything.
like you said, getting smart enough to understand the differences and not laugh at it or make fun of it. I mean, superstitions can seem so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But if you back down a little bit and think about it, well, maybe this is why this is where it came from. It's not total nonsense. It's just
I could say
you arrive there eventually.
my favorite Vietnamese tradition is that playing basketball will make you taller.
Of course,
I have
look at all
so
tall
many-
basketball
I have
players.
so
are.
many. Yeah, it's. I'm like, I have many students, and I never belittle them. I always find that as an opportunity to help them go through a thought experiment and think about what this actually means.
yeah.
And your height is determined largely by your mom, your dad, and your access to nutrients.
Yeah.
It's genetics and whether or not you're malnourished or fully nourished.
Yeah.
And so, like, milk can help you be tall if you don't have a source of calcium from something else. Like, if you don't eat, I guess, leafy greens and other things with a lot of calcium in them. But when I get into it, a lot of students over the years have told me, it's like, well, when you're always jumping up and you're expanding, and they'll say some version of you're stretching your spine. So yeah, but then you come down,
Right.
you land,
Yeah.
and then all that pressure gets compressed. And
There's a lot of terrible diet advice in the U.S. that doesn't make any sense. I mean, people think if you eat fat, you get fat. And just in general, I've seen people post stuff on Instagram. They've got like a bowl of oatmeal, a banana, some other fruit, a glass of orange juice, and they're like eating healthy today. And it's like, that's 100% carbohydrates and sugar. So there's like health-wise, that's maybe not superstition as much, but health-wise, the U.S. has a lot of weird beliefs that just continue to stick around. They debunked the food pyramid now,
yeah,
It's upside down.
and what's crazy is I remember being in 8th grade science class, and the teacher said no one ever got fat from eating too much bread. Yeah,
Yeah, think about
right.
that. I'm body bound by malt. I'm living proof.
Yeah, beer is liquid bread.
Yeah, it's like I don't eat that much food, but damn, I'm big. Where'd all that beer go?
but farmers, workers, people used to eat a lot of bread, a lot of heavy creams and butters, but they worked all day.
Yeah.
They had very labor-intensive careers and lives. The difference now is a lot of people don't, and so not getting fat from bread. Okay, that may well have been true when that man or woman said that, but also if you're talking about a bunch of farmers who are outside and their equipment are manually operated,
Yeah.
That's a very different story
Big
than what
difference.
we're dealing with today.
Big difference, yeah. And I think just a last note on superstitions and or even religion is you said that it all comes back to a reason for a lot of these, and that's very true. And early on, before textbooks and before internet, the most effective way to pass information on was through stories, and stories that stuck with people. And I can't help but to think, and I don't know enough about this, and I would love to talk to someone, a Hindu person in India, more about this. But in India, cows are sacred, and but not bulls. But the cows that are providing milk, it's like that is mother, considered like a second mother. And you see them roaming the streets, like they let them go free. And I can't help but think that hundreds of years ago, it wasn't effective enough to say, guys, don't kill the cow, you're gonna have meat for a day. Just keep drinking the milk. Drink the milk, and then that's the way that we're gonna nourish the most people over time. Well, that's not a good story. And so I wonder, and this is probably blasphemy to someone listening, and I apologize, but I do wonder if that story came about as a way to make more people survive over time. Like, the cow is important. We respect the cow. We revere the cow. Cow gives us milk like mother. Wow, that's powerful. And that's a story that can span generations and spread throughout a country and create change that might help people during that time. And then hundreds of years later, that belief persists, but maybe people don't always know where it came from. And that's with a lot of beliefs around the world.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
I've
Well,
never thought about that.
we could really dig deep into this one.
Yeah.
I could give other examples, but it's like, well, how far do we want to go with this?
Yeah, we can go back to
like
food.
why do you why do you eat fish on Good Friday? Well, it's because the fisheries in Spain were suffering, so the church said, let's help the fisheries.
Yep.
But then it's like, what now? It's all apples and oranges at the end of the day. People do it now because they're offering something. It has nothing to do with that then.
Mm-hmm. But it started there. It had
what-
roots in something that was
You know
like
what
kind
I'm
of
saying, though?
practical.
Like how far do we dig on this? It's like sometimes people of faith or different religions will say that's why you gotta have faith.
Yeah.
Either you have the faith or you don't. If you question it, then that's up to you. Then you don't have the faith.
Yep.
I don't know.
Going back to cows, we always have to ask a.
You can hit that religion filter after this episode.
Well, I don't think we're being
I know.
contentious or anything. We're getting near an hour, so I think it's going fantastic.
Fantastic.
So we always ask people a burger story. So in our one of our earlier episodes, our second released one, we were talking to Winston from Winston's Barbecue on Food Walk, and he was telling us about this hockey puck that his dad would make, and how it was not a great hamburger, but he'd give anything to have a beer and be cooking with his dad and eating that emotion-filled hamburger. Like it's something he looked back on fondly. Do you have a burger story? It doesn't have to involve a burger.
What is so fascinating about food for you, and what was your first real
Oh, well, I grew up with
awesome memory?
with 6 siblings, and so my mom was cooking, and just my mom raising all of us, and so she was cooking dinner almost every night, and so the cheapest way to do that is like lots of bread, lots of canned stuff, roasts, stuff like that, crock pot dishes, and once in a while, like twice a year, I would get like a couple of McDonald's cheeseburgers, and still when I eat, like it was like heaven for me, like that rehydrated onion with the sharp like sourness of the pickle. I love that taste, and like some sweetness from the ketchup. It's only McDonald's has that kind of tang to it, that McDonald's cheeseburger, but it's also kind of small. It feels almost like close to a slider. So I still remember that taste from being a kid because it was so rare. And now it's like, well, fuck, McDonald's is fucking everywhere. It's probably cheaper now than when I was a kid. But that definitely stuck in my memory. And every time I get that, I remember that like childhood satisfaction of like
So now
McDonald's.
it's probably 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Only place open in Towdin. I'm 3 years old again.
No, funny enough, like maybe 15 years later, I was at a point in my life where I was maybe smoking too much. Can I do this? Can I say I smoked weed? Yeah, I can do that. Public record.
It was illegal then.
It was legal.
But it's legal
no,
now.
I was young and I was smoking too much weed and I was gaining too much weight. And my rock bottom is I went to McDonald's and I got 4 cheeseburgers and I ate them all, and then I got 4 more and I ate all those too. I ate 8 McDonald's cheeseburgers and then I put down the weed and went to the gym. So
That'll do it. What is an 8 McDonald's cheeseburger hangover feel like?
oh, dude, and that's the thing is people are like, oh, smoking, man, no hangover. Like a food hangover can be worse than a booze hangover.
Ugh.
So, yeah, there's a couple of ways burgers have been impactful parts of my life.
Wow. Yeah, like the McDonald's cheeseburger, like first great memory and last cancellation of.
Not too much of
Right.
a good thing.
Yeah.
Mark, do you have Do you want to talk a little bit more about how you cook the bird, or?
No, I think this episode's going to be released the same day as the filming of the Ostrich on Sonny's show. So yeah, they're going to see every detail, and we just got to look behind the scenes at how it all came to be. So
When the challenge was brought forth, were you confident that you could do it?
I know you said that, like, when we filmed it, we had done a test bird.
Yeah.
When I was doing a test bird, I would say, nervous, apprehensive, maybe a little unsure, but I was also very determined, and I've cooked a lot of meat, and I knew what I was up against, but also with the help of Chef Jamie, we talked about it a bit. We talked about the different muscle groups have different amounts of fat, and it's not like a pig where, you know, it's all inside the skin and all that fat is captured. I just didn't know, because it hadn't been really done that much. I mean, there's been a few people who claim they have done it, but there's no information. They didn't follow through with any information of what it turned out like, or what it tasted like. So yeah, I would say I wasn't sure, but I was very determined, and I put a lot of attention into every detail. And when we did the test, your guys came and just filmed it, and it was dark. Josh, you were there, and we uncovered it. I was like a kid on Christmas morning. I couldn't wait to grab a piece and see what I had done. And I'm like, it's delicious. I'm like, that's the driest part of the bird right here, and it's juicy.
Yeah.
And then it was like, once I had that moment, it was just like, I know how to do this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it was cool because Tim said, you know, you should be proud of yourself, because you have a lot of connections to great chefs all over the world, and you've been doing this a while, and you did something no one else has done. And I'm like, that's pretty awesome, you know. And yeah, I think it's a great lesson for other chefs and creative people out there. And just because someone hasn't done it, give it a whirl.
Yeah.
If it failed, I would have been okay with it too, and we would have captured it. But what people watching that episode is legit. It's what happened with a little bit of creativity on your guys' part to ask to even do it, and then figure it out, and actually, yeah. I hope what comes out of it in the end is people Google how to cook an ostrich. Yeah. And our search comes up first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we really did it.
Yeah, I think that's like canon now. And I think we should, we'll even put it in the description. Maybe we'll put like a mini recipe of how it was actually done, step by step for people to see. But yeah, kudos to you, man. I mean, yeah, the biggest thing is that there was no manual, there's no cookbook for this shit. Yeah. You just made it happen.
I think that's like cool though. In like, how big was the lobster you did yesterday?
It was about almost 12 pounds.
Yeah, so like the amount of blood that comes out of it is going to be more than any lobster you've seen. They had a dish to make with that. They're like, you know, and it's like, now we're learning something new. Like, look at this, and it probably tasted wonderful too, right?
It's not bad.
Had lobster flavor, maybe weird in texture.
It's like oceany. It's briny of the sea, you know.
But I mean, that's what I mean though. Is like taking that chance, exploring, doing something new, culinary wise.
Yeah.
You're never gonna know until you go for it. But that's. I don't know if I'm answering the original question anymore. I'm just kind of wrapping up how the whole ostrich thing feels. Is like you don't know until you try, and it was an awesome experience. I'm so glad we did it, and now I know how to cook an ostrich.
Hell yeah. I hope those skills come in handy one day.
Well, now I'm asking what's next.
Yeah.
And we can maybe finish off with what's next for you. I mean,
well, I definitely want to work with you guys again. We'll just have to figure out how to top that, or at least move laterally. But for me, what's next? Like, what am I working on now? Right now, we are trying to wrap up the year. We are going to Japan in a couple weeks. We have some crazy stuff planned in Japan. I'll just tell you guys now. Chicken sashimi.
Ouch.
Yeah, this is one of the first foods where I'm actually like, this is a stupid fucking idea. Like, I have done raw blood and stuff like that everywhere, but a chicken, like, people really die from raw chicken.
Well, it's salmonella. That is the big scary one. And
Right.
that's on every single chicken that lives. It's on the surface. Now there's, leave it to I have to say, leave it to Japanese culinary skills to find a way to get the internal meat without getting any of that external bacteria on it. I'm sure there's a method to it.
And I think they might roast the very outside. Do you think that might be part of it?
Sure.
So I think they might, but the inside, I mean, they're cooking their chicken medium rare.
I eagerly wait for that episode because now I'm intrigued.
Yeah, this is the only one that worries me. But if this guy has done it before, like, I mean, Japanese, the culinary arts, people are so meticulous that if he's done it and he hasn't killed anybody, then I'll be fine. Like, same thing as when I had fugu, that poisonous pufferfish there, I was fine. Like, the guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
So we're doing that. We're doing an isopod. Have you heard of an isopod? It's like when a whale dies and falls to the bottom of the ocean, there's lobsters, crabs, and these big, it looks like giant sea cockroaches that are white that go eat it. And
I guess they're crustacean-like, but they're very alien-looking things.
Yeah, they look terrifying. So we're going to catch those. We're going to eat those. And it's not like a common thing to eat. Even in Japan, we had a heck of a time finding someone who has that. So that's cool.
How big are they?
They can get about the size of a football.
Okay.
I mean, not that tall, but like kind of the radius.
It looks like a prehistoric underwater giant cockroach.
Yeah.
Is it insectoid? Is it like a water
It's a
insect?
crustacean of some
It is a
type.
crustacean.
I'll find out more. I'll let you know.
I want to look that up now. Isopod.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's next for the best ever food review show. That sounds cool. So, and I'm sure all your listeners can't wait, or followers and watchers can't wait.
Hope so.
Yeah.
Sonny, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you,
It's
guys.
been a pleasure. It's been a real pleasure.
It's a lot of fun.